I'd like to call the meeting to order. Those that are available or able, you want to join me for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Nice big crowd this morning. Like, look for an approval of the minutes.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a notation on the minutes that I was present at the last board meeting.
Did it get I will change that for you.
Next time, say more.
You know, you were pretty quiet that day.
It's easy to hide on this end of the table.
Commissioner Lemire, are you okay with making that motion yet?
Absolutely.
I'll
Mr. Chair.
second that with the change, sir.
Motion and a second, further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. I look for a motion on the agenda.
So move.
Second. Motion and a second. Discussion on the agenda? Discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Next item of business is social services this morning. Good morning.
Good morning,
Morning.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brad.
Are these on? I'm not sure if these are on or not either, but. All right, well, we'll get started. So we have a
Sorry, yes.
medical assistance report this morning, long-term care, or just all about medical assistance this morning. So Cindy's here to share some data on those individuals who are in MA in Morrison County. So
Okay. good
Cindy, we're
morning.
looking forward to hear from you.
All right. Let's hope I can deliver.
You can do it.
As Brad said, it's just all healthcare this time, so I wanted to give you METS totals first. And I went from the year 2015.
Could you explain what that means, METS?
Sorry, Minnesota Eligibility Technology System. That's the new system where healthcare is at.
Okay.
sometimes
Everything-
referred to as MNsure,
Okay, thank
the
you.
new name for MNsure.
Or Currum, all of it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I gave you 2015 through 2018 because 2015 is when it first came up. You can see the numbers are quite low. And then through June, it went from 2881 in June of 15 to 5883 in June of 2018. Some of that is due to cases that were on the old system, Maxis, were moved to the new system. The only cases we have left on Maxis now are like long-term care cases and disabled waivers, those types of cases.
So how many cases were moved from there to this, do you know?
I don't. I will see if I can find that for the next report,
I
though.
just want to see what the other reason the increase was.
Sure.
Part of this, is, as folks might remember, is the increase in eligibility for medical assistance that Minnesota did expand MA when the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare was passed. So a lot of these increases are continually due to that, but then also moving them from Maxis, which is the old system, and on to MET. So
Yeah, there was a large increase by, at one point, we knew it was by 2,100 persons, not cases, persons. Then on next slide, I gave you just a Region 5 county comparison so you could see, you know, how they line up with us. And the nice thing to say about it is Morrison has the lowest amount of people on medical assistance over those 5 counties. And then the next one, again, is just population and active MET cases throughout the whole county. I did a comparable size comparison in that one. The next slide is documents received and processed through our data imaging system. And you can see that there was a little bit of a dip in 2016, and I actually don't even know how to explain that because we were up and fully running. So if there was a decline in applications, that didn't show on the first slide for 2016. So the documents, sometimes has to do with how much paperwork comes in with each case. Sometimes there's a lot of annuities or trusts or things like that, and those documents can have 30 pages just for, one trust. So I'm just going to attribute it to something along those lines. And we're on pace for hitting over 8,000 again for July of 2018. Next slide is phone calls for 2017 and 2018. I wasn't able to go back further than that because it's a county system that we have for tracking that, and the system doesn't allow us to go back further than 2017. And our phone calls have decreased, and that's because the system, Met system, Currem, is getting better. There still is a lot to be desired, but it's much better than it was in the beginning.
When you go to AMC, some of your AMC meetings talks a lot about the technology systems around human services, which is what METS is. And we've had a lot of conversations as directors about what to do with this system, and we continually try to talk about improving the system versus throwing it out, throwing it away because of all the cases that are in there and how we'd manage that. But I know as AMC is talking about putting a work group together to talk about how can we have a better transition of our technology systems so that they do the work we need them to do. So had a lot of conversations at AMC about technology. Similar circumstances to what they had with MNLARS, although we're 3.5 years, 4 years into this, so it's shown some great strides.
And along with what Brad said, the other programs, they hope to eventually move those to this system as well, all the public assistance programs that we deal with. But hopefully they will work out all the bugs before they do that transition.
Well, even if we stumble and stumble and stumble, I think we're light years ahead of MNLARS.
Well, but if
4
you were-
years ahead. 4 years ahead.
4 years ahead. If you remember back when this rolled out, it was some of the
No,
same issues. And I
absolutely.
think it's amazing how easy that we forget that.
Yeah.
And that
And it
you
was.
see the struggles
It was a
right now in
struggle.
other areas
Yeah.
that you go, well, kind of seen this before, unfortunately, with state programs that are rolled out maybe
Yeah.
a bit before they're ready.
And, staff did a great job in transitioning to this. We did increase staff because of the move, but we also increased cases by about 1,800.
Yes.
I don't know about increase. Would you say it's just because of the move of technology systems, or the fact that you just had that many more eligible?
No, because of the eligibility
Yes,
changes,
was
just
so
because we
much
had
greater.
1,800 new
Yeah.
cases, 1,800 new folks that were probably going to be on medical assistance.
Yeah.
Because of the income standard
Yeah.
rising,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
more people became
Yeah.
eligible.
And that was the very intent, was that it was expanding those programs to be able to allow for more people to be eligible and get that
Yeah.
benefit.
And to go back to the, case numbers too, I'd like to mention that, when you're talking healthcare, especially because the MA Max does still reflect long-term care in this report, that, cases might not change a whole lot, the number. They're usually around 800 or 900 for the county. But we need to remember that there are many people passing away and many
Oh,
new people
absolutely.
coming on. So the amount of work isn't necessarily reflected in those case numbers. The next slide, I just wanted you to see what the income standards were for household size. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Everyone know what the periodic data match is? I'm sure you've all heard of it.
This was kind of the new hot button issue on the social service side. And 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, the legislature passed a law requesting periodic data matching, which will take information from all sorts of fields and determine if individuals are on public assistance. If all of those things that don't match on our system versus what is on the other systems they're checking, it's going to require financial workers to go back and review those cases. So it's been a challenging topic for counties because it could require more staff again if we have to do a lot of review on cases. So
And with what Brad's speaking about, when we get those, what they're called a ding, because the income isn't matching up with what the client reported versus what the system has. So the worker doesn't just go in and look. So if there is a big discrepancy, then it's sending out a notice asking for, verification of income changes, and then possibly redetermining eligibility based on new information received from the client. So rather than just looking at cases once or twice a year at review, now these are periodic, so whenever they come through, that will require that extra look.
Mr. Chair, have you found that that's catching issues that previously before weren't caught? Is it serving its purpose?
For Morrison County, last month was the first month that we actually acted on those cases, and I believe in the healthcare unit, there were 17 cases that came through that got a hit. But keep in mind, this is just starting, so.
Was there those discrepancies, then they're looked into and determined whether or not there is something that was reported wrong, or?
Correct.
Did you have a gut on the findings of that, or gut feeling?
Out of those 17 cases, I believe there were 6 of them that had an income change, but it didn't change their eligibility. It was enough to register the change, because there is a threshold. I don't know what that is, but if it's enough to make a ding, we look at it, and then when they send in the verification on these 17 cases where 6 of them came back with an income increase, it was still under the standard. They happened to have gotten a raise or something, so it was enough to register that, but they remained eligible. So luckily, no one was receiving benefits they shouldn't have been. But that is the whole point in the system, is to catch those people that went on initially that may have not, been eligible, or maybe not quite truthful with their income.
So a great idea, I think, again, as they talk about the administrative responsibility, as all of these new cases are dinged and having to go through and look at them. Some counties are very concerned about their staffing and ability to manage. Cindy and Karen and I have had some conversations, and we're not too worried at this point about our staff and the size of our county. But I think, again, this is another issue you'll hear about at AMC when you go to meetings, about kind of those administrative responsibilities to ensure we're paying attention to fraud and those kinds of things. But again, it's just one of those things that the legislature placed upon counties to make sure that we are managing the fraud areas.
Yeah, and I think all of that, Mr. Chair, is well intended, and that's a good, checks and balance for the system. It's that concern about, well, the funding doesn't come from the state to be able to pay for that extra time it takes, and so that's where that balance is.
I think there was also concern when it rolled out about whether or not the system they were using could accurately identify the income discrepancies, the asset discrepancies, and those kinds of things. So they actually turned it on to check and do this first go around, and then they turn the switch off to evaluate whether or not it was accurate information. So they're still working on the bugs in terms of making sure they pull this data from the correct sources and it matches up with what we have in METS. But again, one of those issues that another one of those things that we have to pay attention to. So.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Cindy, when you go back to the maximum income level for people, how does that work? When it says like 2 people in the household, $21,000, what about a child that's 16 years old that's making money? Does his income go against his parents?
It does not. Income never deems from child to parent, only from parent to child.
Okay, so.
And now when you look at those income standards, the thing is too, when you're in the MET system, and if there's family, first of all, there's no assets counted. And when it comes to the income, it's what we call MAGI, Modified Adjusted Gross Income. So these figures, the 16,146 would actually be, like I said, the MAGI income. So depending on, what their deductions are and such, they could have, $22,000, $24,000 worth of income, and then it would bring them down to that standard.
Okay.
Taxes are used in the MET system for determining income, whether it be self-employment or a job.
Very good. Interesting stuff as always. Thank you, Cindy. Do you have anything further from the board?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very kindly, Cindy.
Thank you.
Brad, you got some more things under public health?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I'll ask Cindy and Melissa to come up. So one of the things that Public Health does is we have 2 car seat technicians that assist new parents in learning how to properly belt their kids in a vehicle. And so this is an important program not only for like a South Country Health Alliance that helps reimburse us, but for child care providers and foster care providers. So thought it'd be good for Melissa and Cindy to come chat a little bit about the car seat program and what it has to offer residents in Morrison County. So I'll turn it over to Melissa and/or Cindy.
Melissa's our primary car seat technician, so she is the resident expert.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I'm Melissa Harris. I'm a registered nurse and a child passenger safety technician. So just starting out with a little bit of facts here. Did you know that 3 out of 4 car seats are installed incorrectly? That's 75% of our car seats out there on the road are installed incorrectly. Car seats are complicated, and I hate to admit it, but it took a 3-day course to teach me that my child's car seat was installed incorrectly. So they are really complicated. So from that day forward, it's been my mission to make sure that I keep as many children out there on the roads as safe as possible. So car crashes are the leading cause of death in children, and most of these deaths are preventable. By using a car seat, we can reduce the risk of injury from 71 to 82% and reduce the risk of death by 28%. So next slide. So we have 2 goals of the car seat program. The first one, like Brad said, was to provide education to parents, grandparents, foster parents, basically any caregiver that's transporting a child. We also provide education to local ECFE groups or parent groups and do some outreach in the community. We also are hoping in the future to do some education through the CARS program, it's called. It's a 3-hour course for foster parents and daycare providers. They need to have this course in order to transport children in their care. I also get people that will call in for advice. They might ask when they should transition their child from one car seat to the next, or I might have a pregnant mom stop in and have me come out to her car and inspect her car seat just to make sure it's installed correctly before she has her baby. So doing a lot of education there with a variety of people. Our second goal is to provide good quality seats to those that are in need. So next slide. So in order to become a child passenger safety technician, I had to go to Alexandria and do an intense 3-day course. And I'm certified for 2 years, and we need to do continuing education units in order to keep this certificate valid. So we're hoping that the reimbursement from South Country Health Alliance will help offset the training costs for myself and our other child passenger safety technician. So next slide. So on average, we do typically about 70 car seats per year in Morrison County through South Country Health Alliance. This year we've done about 58 through South Country. So they're our main avenue of car seats. We're right on track, maybe a little bit ahead of last year at this time. So we have 3 main funding sources. Like I said, South Country is our biggest one. We get reimbursed about $100 per car seat appointment. Each appointment lasts about an hour long. Our second funding source is UCare, and this one's new to us. This is a very specific population, very small specific population here in Morrison County that have UCare. So we do have seats available should the need arise. And our third funding source is through grants. We're able to apply for grants through the Department of Public Safety every year and get seats for those that can't afford seats. They do have to pay a small fee, whatever they can afford, maybe $20, $10, depending on what they can afford. So next slide. Why do car seats work? First and foremost, they keep the child in the car. They also protect the vital areas of the body, the head, neck, and spine. These are areas of the body that can't easily be repaired. They also spread the crash force over the largest portion of the child's body, their shoulders and their hips. So the next slide. So So we always want to make sure that we're choosing the right seat because not every seat fits every child, not every seat fits in every car. So we take into consideration the child's age, their height, their weight, and their developmental level or their maturity level because not every 4-year-old or 5-year-old can safely sit in a booster restrained with a seatbelt. Some kids wrap the seatbelt around their neck or some are unclicking it, so you have to take that into consideration when you're choosing a seat for a child. So next slide. So here in Minnesota, we have a child passenger restraint law. This states that any child under the age of 8 and 4'9" need to be in a federally approved booster seat. These, of course, are the minimum standards. As child passenger safety technicians, we encourage parents to keep their children in booster seats or car seats longer, just to protect them. And this also states that safety seats must be installed and used according to the manufacturer's directions, and that any infant or child under the age of 1 and 20 pounds needs to be in a rear-facing car seat. Again, that's the minimum standard. We're trying to encourage people to keep their child rear-facing until at least 2 years old. And last week, a new study came out that they're encouraging parents to keep their children rear-facing until at least 40 pounds, so 3 or 4 years old, depending on where your child is. And then the law also applies to any motor vehicle that was originally equipped with seat belts. So this is a little video here, and the one, you'll see the child is restrained in a car seat. The other one, the child is not restrained at all. You'll see the child flying forward that's not restrained, hitting the vital areas of the body, the head, the neck, the spine, probably has a brain injury, a spinal cord injury, paralyzed, has maybe even died from this crash, where the child that's in the car seat has maybe some bruising over where the straps were, a little bit of discomfort, but that will heal within a couple of days. So that's why we do what we do, is to protect the children. So any questions or anything?
Gentlemen, questions?
I know it's a lot of information.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, as a grandparent, now, again, this is very important, you gotta have these car seats and that stuff, but where does one go if you wanna, because we've got, I forgot how many grandchildren. Move them around.
A few.
Car seat to car seat. How do you know, I mean, do we call you and say, can you help us put this in?
You sure can.
Or
Yep.
can you have different areas around the county do those things for you?
I know that we can do it. I know also Babies on Broadway has a child passenger safety technician, but I'm not aware of if there's other people at the police station. Some police stations have people certified. I'm not sure if ours.
Or you do what I do, you have their parents put the car seats in before they leave.
Yeah, but parents tell you that's wrong already.
Just give me a call. Set up an appointment. I'm glad to teach anybody.
I, for some reason, thought this was not in effect here like a year or two ago. Is this always been out there? I thought it was discontinued.
The laws for foster parents and daycare providers is probably about at least 10 or 12 years old, and that's really when car seat technicians, they started to train car seat technicians, was about 10 or 12 years ago. You generally could get a free car seat from when I had kids. When you left the hospital for infants, you could take one with you from the hospital and borrow it or rent it for 6
was a
months,
long
and they don't do that
time
anymore.
ago.
So when you hopped on the horse and buggy to get home.
Melissa, I have to tell you, you know your material. I appreciate that very much. I do have a couple of things.
Sure.
This is not income-based. What you do is not income-based, or is it income-based?
Well, they have to be on South Country Health Alliance, the
Okay.
majority of the people.
So
that
Randy's
is-
not.
I'm not available.
I will take anybody that has questions.
And that's my further up.
I would. I would.
What South Country Health Alliance or UCare provides is a car seat to those members who have who have children born to them.
Yep.
But anybody is eligible to come through and get training on use of a car seat or to determine if their car seat fits their child.
And I think that's extremely important to hit pretty heavy. Anybody
Yep.
is able to come to see you, anyone. And if we're 75% non-compliant, anybody needs to make an appointment with public health in Morrison County and get this done. That's remarkable. You very much, when you say 3 intensive days, it's obvious. You know your material.
And when are the best hours to come and see?
Anytime between 8 and 4:30.
At 4 feet 9 inches on there, my wife just by just a few inches.
Booster seat probably would help.
My daughter is right there too, so, and she's 30.
Anything further, gentlemen? Ladies, thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you.
Very good job.
Thank you.
I have one other item under public health, and that we have a change in ownership. So requesting a new license for Linda's Bar and Grill in Royalton.
Look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
That's all I have this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly, Brad. Our next item is Crook Neck Lakes Annual Report. Gentlemen, if you just want to come up here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh. I have to do this.
I'm Dan Sanger, I'm the chairman. I'm David Gurney, the secretary.
Welcome.
Good to have you here. Thank you.
Got it.
Hope you didn't get too wet this morning when you got in here.
It was raining up there.
And please, just fire away.
Okay. Our beginning balance for the year was $39,882, and then we had ending balance of a little bit over $40,774, but we have two outstanding debts still remaining. Part of it is for a grant. The AIS grant is going to pay for the second survey. That's being determined yet for the weed survey. And then also we have our water quality still outstanding bill. And so that's going to bring us down to about $39,000, we believe, somewhere in that neighborhood. We're requesting this year to have another budget's going to be right around that $11,000, and there it is there.
Fair.
We anticipate that'll be our budget for next year, and which would drive, if we had a $60 levy, is what we're requesting this year. It was passed by our board. That's going to bring us in about $3,500 in the red underneath that proposed budget for next year. And we're trying to drive our overall bottom line closer to $30,000. Right now, we're at $41,000. And so that was our one motion that we had, a request for the board to approve this year. Also this year, we had the acreage that we were treated was 6.2 acres. Last year, we treated 6.8. The year before was about 15 acres. And so we're steadily going down, possibly high water, possibly the ice that we had this year, late spring, all contributed to that. Checking with RMB Laboratories, they've informed us that a lot of the lakes in central Minnesota, particularly as you head up towards Alex and Fergus Falls, they had decreased amounts of curly leaf this year that they found. And so they believe a combination of high water in the area and the combination of the late ice out. But that's what their hypothesis is. No real science to back that up right now. We'd have to check it out, but we're on a steady decline on the amount that we have. The annotation that we have up there for $15,000 for the legal fees, that was to give us the authority to be able to spend up to that. That would come strict, we didn't budget for that on the levy. That's going to come out of our reserve should we need it to defend ourselves in the future.
Against what?
That would be strictly for if we need to, Chaminade takes action, and then we need to protect the lake. Should that have a negative impact on Crook Neck Lake, and we need to consult legally, that would be the fund we would use.
Question on that. Is that possible, Deb? Do you know, to use those funds for that? Would that kind of roll over the same thing that we were talking about before?
Well, it's a budget item that if you approve now, that's good. It looks like you had it approved specifically as a motion in your meeting, so that's good. So it's a specific identifier. It's not being levied, but it's identified in the budget as an okay expense. And so I think that's fine in terms of how it's presented.
Okay.
I'm just
If I
reading
may,
that.
Mr. Chair, what was your levy last year?
$60.
It was 60 for 2000, so it's staying the same.
Your intent is to keep it the same. Yep.
What did you say your fund balance is? Like
Our
what's
fund balance right now, our current balance is $40,774.
Thank you.
We think we have about potentially $1,000 outstanding right now. Next year, our intent is to continue to survey twice a year. We're going to treat if we find anything, and we're going to continue on with our water studies to determine the effect of the treating on the lake and the quality of the lake.
Okay.
Which is basically what we've been doing over the years.
Mr. Chair, if we could just take a minute because you're here. I know that you had the Chaminade project came to you for support, and if you want to talk a little bit about what the result of that was. I know you sent a letter to the commissioners, but maybe it would be a good time because you're here to talk in person about that a little bit.
Essentially, we had I would say a relatively robust discussion at our meeting that went on for some time. And Dave, you can interject if you like. Essentially, there's a lot of information that's flowing back and forth, and so you hear one story, and then you hear one story again from various people. And so is the water level going to be lowered to a foot below? Is it going to be lowered to a foot and a half below? Is Chaminade going to pay for it, or could Crookneck be dragged into paying for it? Some of that is, the benefit, who benefits from it. That came from the Todd County.
I think our discussion really centered around the appropriateness of what we should do. We had not only discussions at the board level, but also, at our meetings. And it was, I don't think we have the right or even a position to oppose somebody else's action on their own lake. And so if it has no impact on us, I don't think there's any type of negative we would have. But if there is a negative impact, I think we're elected to be able to protect the interests of our owners, and therefore, we would then take appropriate action if there is an impact. We are hydraulically connected, and so we're watching it, but at a point in time when we have really not enough detail to impact it, our saying, being for or against is premature. I think we're in a position where we want to sit and be a part of it. Part of our resolution to the county was, let's set up, some sort of, stakeholders group so that we can exchange information and find out. Because what they want to do, or anyone else around us, there are several lids, we would not take a position until we found out if it had a negative impact. And certainly it's going to have an impact. The question is that negative or not? Once we find that, we will come out. But I think until that time, we really feel it's not prudent to be able to, take any position because it's not, we have not enough information to do that.
Well, and at this point in time, it's not costing you a nickel one way or the other.
Correct, yeah.
I get that.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just a question. Was there quite a few electors there at the meeting too?
At our annual meeting?
Right, yeah.
36, I believe, was the number of owners, and there's 137 mailings I made out. Okay. 2 were returned that I don't have accurate addresses for.
That's a relatively high turnout for us. Yeah.
Oh, it is.
So those
Yes.
residents are concerned, I'm assuming, by that high turnout.
It is the talk.
Yeah, it dominates our meetings. Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I still have to ask about the 15. I'm not against the 15, but how is the 15,000 different for them to work against Lake Chaminade stuff versus if that was Lake Chaminade asking for the $15,000, then that would go against the property owners as an assessment. Am I not correct?
Well,
or am I thinking wrong here?
They have a fund balance to pay for it. So they've already charged those property owners, and that's how those funds have been. It's overage from prior years on how the fund balance has been built.
Correct.
And so it's still a budget item that needs to go to you for approval, but they're just proposing that the amount not be charged to those property owners this year because they have it in the bank.
Well, even the total amount isn't all being assessed to the property owners, correct?
No, you said
Taking
you're
part of
short
that
a
out
little
of
bit.
You're even taking that out of reserves, part of that, out of the 11,000.
Absolutely.
So part of that's coming out of their reserves too.
Understand. And like I says, I'm not against this. I just want to make sure
No.
we're doing this right, because even the money that comes out of reserves was money that was approved earlier to take care of water quality and this and that. So,
And
so
even
does
if
that-
they have it coming out of reserve, they still need your approval to be able to spend it as a budget item,
Yep.
which is why it's listed here.
Okay, I have no problem. I just want to make sure that we're doing it right.
Yep.
Chairman, can I have a comment?
Absolutely, please.
The only thing I want to make sure is that it's not phrased as we're opposing anybody.
Correct.
And, fighting them I think is, not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is get legal advice as to what is the best way to protect our interest. Again, if we don't have an impact, I don't see us spending a dime on it. And I think the number here came out of some discussions in that, people said, now what happens if in the next year, we haven't assessed money for it? And actually, this is the budget we have that is only for the treatment. This says, can we spend down some of the reserves if needed? A lot of discussion over it. But again, it was trying to phrase it in, if we need this money and we don't have it in the bank, we don't have it. And so therefore, is it an allowable one? We wanted to be very visible about the fact that this isn't something we've had on the budget before. So this is a change. Take a look at it. Very, again, robust discussion about it, but let's phrase it as advice rather than anything that is going to oppose somebody, because that's really not the intent.
Right.
I understand that.
Right.
I appreciate the transparency.
Yes.
And
thank-
please, I'm not against this. I'm not.
Yeah,
I
no,
just want to
yeah.
make sure that we're all legal pages when legal work starts coming down.
Believe me.
Thank you.
So ultimately, the consideration for you is to consider approval of the entire budget and also then that specific dollar amount charged to each parcel, which is $60.
I'll make a motion to approve their performance, their plan.
Second.
Got a motion on the table. We've got a second. Further discussion.
I like your application here. It's very thorough and you gave us a lot of information. It's nice to see that. Thanks.
Further discussion. Hearing no further discussion, this is a roll call vote. I will start with Commissioner Blaine.
Commissioner Blaine votes aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Lemire.
Aye.
Wincher.
Aye.
And myself as an aye vote. Motion passes. Gentlemen, thank you very, very kindly for your time. I appreciate it. Stay dry. Let's see, our next item of business this morning is going to be Crane Meadows.
She must be on her way.
And I know there's really not three of you. However,
Show the office.
We're going to bookend him.
Same guy on that show the office.
It's not.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just here this morning to introduce you to Steve Carroll. He's the project manager and the refuge manager for both Sherburne U.S. Fish and Wildlife Refuge and Crane Meadows. And Steve reached out to me for this introduction because he said it had been a time since you actually had a face representing Crane Meadows, and so he wanted to meet you and to give you an update on the refuge work. And then Steve is also now a partner in the Sentinel Landscape. So Steve Carroll.
Helen, thank you very much. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
And good
board.
morning, Shannon.
Yep. Just for the record, I know a lot of people say Carol. It's actually Carl for the pronunciation,
Oops.
so that's okay.
Sorry.
But everybody does
Carl.
it, even people that I've known for many years. So it's just for the record. But yeah, I just wanted to take this opportunity to come and kind of meet and greet with the board here. And I'm the refuge manager of Crane Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, which is actually a complex. It's bigger than what Helen mentioned. It's actually also combined with Rice Lake National Wildlife Refuge up by McGregor, and then the two small islands out on Mille Lacs Lake, Mille Lacs National Wildlife Refuge. There's two little white islands for those that probably meander out there fishing, might recognize them. But it's about 50,000 acres total that I oversee. But mainly today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Crane Meadows National Wildlife Refuge here in Morrison County. And I don't know how many of you folks have actually had the opportunity to come out and visit the refuge, but it's been there since 1992. And I've actually only been the manager for about 6 years now. And I'm stationed out of Sherburne National Wildlife Refuge, which is over by Zimmerman. So I'm not over here as often as I should, just because of the logistics and the amount of acreage and responsibility I have over in that location. But we have approximately about 2,095 acres for Crane Meadows. It's about 14 different parcels that make up that refuge. And it basically only has one staff member that's located there. It's a maintenance worker, Ron Beam. A lot of you may know Ron. And we had a station manager there, Paul Solar, but he retired, and with our budget cuts and stuff, we haven't been able to fill a position back into that location. So it's been a little more of a hectic situation trying to take care of those folks, or take care of the refuge. But Ron does a good job. Some of our main goals over there is obviously Oak Savanna and Sedge Meadow management, and so we do a lot with restoration, trying to restore the prairie and Oak Savanna, maintain our hiking trails over there, as well as dealing with any of the other things that come up through our organization that we need to adjust for. One of the things that we're currently working on right now is we're looking at redoing the hunt plan for that refuge, where we currently only have it open to youth and disabled hunting, and we're going to potentially open that up to hunting for the public hunting on that refuge and different areas on the refuge. So we are going to be hopefully within the next few months we'll have that out for public comment and be going in that direction. One of the things I like to talk about a little bit is the Friends of Crane Meadows. A lot of you folks probably know of the Friends organization, and they've been really, really supportive of our refuge. It's not a real big organization, but they do a lot. They help us out with activities and events at the refuge, and then also they've provided dollars to help us out with some new additions and that we add to the refuge complex, or to the refuge itself. One of the things that they've been working on, or we've been working on collectively, is the Sedge Meadow classroom. And it's actually, for those folks that have been out there where their shop building is, it's actually an addition off to the side that was an old lean-to that we actually enclosed in. The Friends helped pay for concrete. We put concrete in and closed the walls, and we're working on finishing that project a little bit at a time. I think the Friends are looking at maybe doing some fundraising to try to help support that project, but to insulate it and get it to be a enclosed facility that we can use for the community to, for outdoor education and stuff like that. So we're really excited about it. It's just a slow process because of funding, and we're making a little bit at a time, little baby steps on this one. We do use the facility, or we have been using it since we enclosed it the last couple of years for our Habitat Day festival or activity that we have out there at the refuge. This upcoming year in March will be our 19th annual Habitat Day. I didn't get these passed around, but these are the event schedule from this year. There's only like one event left, but this gives you an idea of some of the things that are going on in the refuge. There'll be a new event schedule as we move forward. But we at the Habitat Day, which is one of our bigger events, that's a community event that there's a lot of sponsors and support from the community, and we have about 250 bluebird boxes and 150 wood duck boxes that we give out, and kids can come there and hammer them together, or actually we move to screws because it's less noisy, but we allow them to put them together, and they're free for the public to come out and take, and there's a little bit of education about wood ducks and bluebirds at that event as well. So I think it's usually like the first weekend or second weekend. I think it's second weekend in March. So I'm not sure exact date yet at this time. Most of the events and any of the activities we have at the refuge can be found on our website. There is a Crane Meadows National Wildlife Refuge website. One of the other things that we do in the fall, this year it's on October 9th and 10th, and it's been really successful activity is that we have a deer hunt for hunters with disabilities. And there's been a lot of community support for this activity. Matter of fact, there's been enough community support that they've actually been able to build 10 enclosed hunting blinds for the disabled folks that hunt out there. And these were without donations from volunteers and community support. And those hunting blinds actually have a lot of them have names on the side of the blinds who donated or who contributed the most for those blinds. But we can put those out on different places on the refuge, and then our staff and volunteers get these folks out to go out and be able to hunt. It's usually like a day and a half hunt because they require some sighting their rifles in, or shotguns, rifles I guess they are, here so they sight those in, and then the volunteers and provide them food and several meals. So it's a really good activity. There's I think 10 hunters that are selected, and I believe we're still going through Options is the organization that basically makes the selection. So if you know folks that are interested, they can apply. I think this year might be already booked up already with the people that are wanting to hunt. So there's other things that we do, obviously, especially with the Sedge Meadow classroom kind of coming into play, is that we bring school groups out and try to provide. Our staffing is very limited, what we have out there, but we do bring folks over from Sherburne to do some educational activities, but a lot of them are volunteer-led, and from our friends of Crane Meadows do a lot of that for us. Recently, we've had like the Yes organization out of Royalton, and some other school groups come out and help us out with seeding native forbs, doing distribution across the prairie, and that was a really cool activity to see that many kids that involved with natural resources. So we try to communicate and work with the community as much as possible. One other thing that I wanted to mention that I know is usually that the commissioners are usually interested in different counties is that if there's any highway or federal highway funding, and I always like to bring that up just because since Crane Meadows is a National Wildlife Refuge, a lot of times those roads that provide access to those refuges can qualify for federal highway dollars, and maybe folks already are aware of that, but I like to bring that to your attention. And we do have a gentleman out of our regional office, Brandon Jutes, that is the person to contact if there's any need or interest in trying to provide funding for those road projects. So I'm not exactly sure how they get into the mix, but I do know that there is funding out there in times for that. Covered quite a bit of stuff here, but I guess the main reason I wanted to come here is just to see if there's any questions that you have for me. I know that the public probably asks about the refuge quite a bit, and it is a kind of a neat asset for the county, and I just wanted to make sure that if there's anything you had or questions that I could answer, or if you want to reach out to me at any time, I'd be happy to answer those.
Steve, I'll go first. First of all, thank you very much for coming. Great explanation as to what goes on at Crane Meadows. I very much appreciate that, and I will certainly welcome you back anytime that you want to come give us a report.
Okay.
What's happening? What's happening with our neighbors down the road? I very much appreciate that, and I'm aware, I just can't think of her name, that
Colette Baptist.
And
Marilyn Emerson, or
Emerson.
Emerson.
With all the work that's been done out there with the kids when they're building birdhouses and wood duck houses, I know that.
Yep.
So I very much appreciate that. Board comments, questions, concerns?
Very good. Thank you.
How do individuals, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
how do individuals know when and how to apply for that disabled hunt?
It's usually on our website, and you can go right directly to Options, that organization. I'm not sure exactly how to reach that, but it is on our website. Or if you're out there and there's somebody actually at the headquarters, you can they can get you an application. But we don't make the selection through our agency. Basically, we host that activity at the refuge, and so that way there is. I mean, that is about right now the only hunting that is allowed is the disabled hunting out there. But if it's been a really successful activity, and these folks are taken care of really well. And I think the last couple years, we've had about a 50% success of getting deer. And of course, the volunteers and the staff, they will help them get the deer back to the headquarters, and they'll help clean it and all that. So it's been a good thing for getting disabled folks to that opportunity.
Very good deal. Thank you.
You know, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, it's my absolute favorite place to go out and take my dog and jog. It's fantastic trail system out there. And hopefully we get snow again,
Yes,
so we can
yes.
ski, because that is, it's wonderfully maintained. I really do appreciate that. I frequent it a lot.
So my name is Chair, the Habitat Day, again, we attended that with the grandkids and all that, and again, the volunteers that help out there, but again, it's a great experience for your kids, grandkids, and I really encourage people to get out there, because just to watch them even, put a birdhouse together is, something of education for them, so I hope that continues.
Right. Yeah, we try to do a moonlight ski at one point. It might be on that schedule, I think, it was already over for this year. But and then I forgot to mention that we did just recently acquire a 53-acre piece of property. Paulette Pappenfuss, the late Paulette Pappenfuss, before she passed on, sold a parcel of that refuge of her land to us, and she has intentions in her will to try to give the Fish and Wildlife Service an opportunity to acquire that property for Crane Meadows National Wildlife Refuge. She was a member of the Friends organization, and everybody that knows Miss Pappenfuss knows that she was an avid hunter and really cared about youth hunting, and so that is another reason that we really want to move on opening some hunting opportunities, especially on the land that she provided us because of that, to give those youth hunting opportunities. So
Very good. Very good. Very good. Again, Helen, Shannon, thank you very much for escorting Steve here today.
Even though I mentioned it wrong, I've known him for a few years, and I still call it, he probably calls me McClellan.
yeah,
No problem.
I can't even say it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item of business can be land services. Good morning, Amy.
All right. I have a few items for you following the last Planning Commission meeting. So the first one is to consider the interim use permit application from Brian and Dana Stengel, and that's to establish a home extended business, in particular to operate an appliance repair shop. This was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission, and with 4 conditions, and those are abide by all applicable state and local laws in regard to appliance repair and proper disposal of fluids and wastes, maintain records of disposal of appliance fluids and wastes, no outdoor storage of appliances or appliance components, and the interim use permit shall terminate when Brian Stengel no longer resides on the property.
I would look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Motion, second, discussion. Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
All right, thank you. The next item is the conditional use permit application for Ron Properties LLC. This is for a conditional use permit to establish a bulk fuel depot, and that consists of installing 2 30,000-gallon propane tanks. This was also recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with one condition, and that is to abide by federal, state, and local law as it pertains to bulk storage of fuel.
Look for a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Discussion? I have a little discussion, and it just came to me, and it should have come to me at the Planning Commission meeting, which it didn't. And I'm going to kind of put Commissioner Lemire on the spot just a little tiny bit. Commissioner Lemire, only because you're a firefighter am I putting you on the spot for this. I'm very clear, as we all are, there's a gas station out in that area. The ethanol plant, or excuse me, the company or the business formerly known as the ethanol plant is out in that area. Federated Co-op, I believe, has storage tanks out in that area also. Is the fire service aware of this? That's the question that I'm bringing forth. Is the fire service aware of this, and/or is the fire service made aware of this in the event of who knows? And I don't know if you can tell me that.
To be totally honest, I have no idea if they contacted.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious, just had a question.
I don't know what the federal or state or local laws are that pertain to fuel storage. Maybe that has a component to it, but.
Don't know that.
Mr. Chair, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has quite a bit of permitting that needs to be done for above-ground storage tanks, and one of them is an emergency response, and the component in that is notifying your local fire and law enforcement with emergency contact information.
Outstanding.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Amy's very, very smart.
She's extremely smart. I should have known that before I even asked the question. Further discussion, any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Smart. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
We already knew that.
That motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was not implying someone else wasn't, Mr. Lemire. I was just implying that Amy was.
The last item I have is the interim use permit application from Probar Properties, John Jungers. This request was to establish a limited rural business consisting of assembling and selling of recreational products. This also was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission, and this had one condition as well, and that was the interim use permit will terminate when John Jungers and/or Minnesota Outdoor Products no longer owns or operates the business.
Would look for a motion?
Mr. Chair, before that, I have a question to Amy. Who polices this if this terminates? Who would know that, okay, he's no longer in business, or if he would turn around and sell to someone else? Who knows that, or how does one find out?
Well, when property is transferred, we're going to know, the Planning and Zoning Office is going to know it because we have a provision in our ordinance for when property is transferred, that triggers a septic compliance inspection. And so every year we go through all of the property transfers to look whether that requirement has been met. So we would see it if that property changes hands.
And if, in this case, they're recommending the interim use permit will terminate when John Youngers and of Minnesota Outdoor Products no longer owns or operates the business, my suggestion would, I'd like to change that interim permit to if he would transfer it and sell it, this is what I'd like to make a motion on, if you would sell it to Mr. Lemire, why should he have to go through the whole process as long as he keeps the same retail, whatever he's saying?
So would you like to rephrase it to say the interim use permit will terminate when Minnesota Outdoor Products no longer operates at this location? Is that what you're?
I also don't want them to put in anything else. I would like to keep what they're continuously manufacturing or whatever. So I want to make sure that, because Minnesota Products, if they would decide to make widgets, well, now that would trigger, or maybe they could keep it. I would rather just have them continue with what they're continually selling or manufacturing, do you understand?
Okay, so
Can I ask a question on that, Randy?
Sure.
What about if they were doing that and they happened to add another product to their line? Would that throw them?
Yes, then that would throw them into, they'd have to come and get another permit. If they were to make widgets, I'm assuming they would have to come regardless. Even if the current owner would change something, he would have to come again and acquire a permit, correct?
So right now, what was identified, and I'm just looking through the staff report. So right now, the applicant proposed this business specifically for the assembly and retail sale of outdoor products, including deer stands, fishing sleds, and hunting gear. So if they were to change to, what if they start making tents? I mean, that's still outdoor gear. So are you comfortable with that?
But I would not want them to start selling, I don't know, vegetables, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
The deviate from the outdoor sports.
Okay.
Say, that's
I
what
understand.
I don't want them to be able to do.
Okay.
And to answer Mr. Wilson's questions, if they would do that, and let's say he starts selling wood stoves, that would trigger, currently or down the road, would trigger a new permitting process.
Well, the way, let me look. So right now, what you're granting them is to establish a limited rural business consisting of assembling and selling of recreational products. So if they deviate from that, you're giving them a permit to do that. So if they deviate from that, yes, that would be an intensification or expansion of the use, and they need to be coming back in.
And the only way that would trigger, let's say they would start selling wood stoves, if somebody would turn them in, because you would not know that as a planner.
Not necessarily. We may or may not know that. Depends. You know, if they came in and said, hey, we need to build another building because we're doing this, then we might know. But we don't always necessarily know if they're changing something like that.
So I don't know, in a nice legal form, could you write something and explain?
So
that
you
to the
want,
board?
so do you still want the condition as written, the interim use permit will terminate when John Jungers and/or Minnesota Outdoor Products no longer owns or operates the business? And then a second condition that the limited rural
Well,
business.
I would like to, if he wants to sell it and keep it the same, I wouldn't need, I don't want him to come back to the, planning commission and pay another $500.
Okay.
That's
So-
what I'm looking for.
Okay, so in an interim use permit, you must identify an end date.
And the end date would be if they discontinue the sports, that's my,
Okay.
anything to do with that, that's what I would like.
Okay, so if.
Mr. Chair, does that typically move them into a conditional use permit then instead of an interim permit?
No.
No, okay.
No, not necessarily. It depends on what they're changing to. It might still fit under limited rural business, but specifically for something else.
Limited rural business is always, or we typically look at that as
That's an interim use
interim.
permit,
Okay.
correct? That's the only time we allow them. All right, so you would like it that it'll terminate when and if outdoor, let's see,
Taking sporting or.
recreational products. Okay.
Is that Minnesota Outdoor Products like a franchise of some sort, or do we know much about that?
It's the name of his business.
Oh, okay, so it's his
Whether that's a
specific thing.
franchise, I'm
Okay.
not sure. Okay.
Chair, to Commissioner Wincher, I'm just trying to get my arms around where you're going with this. And are you doing this to try and help Mr. Jungers or protect him?
I'm trying to protect.
Going forward, because I'm concerned that we have to be careful with language we put in. I'm big on helping him with his business, and I'm elated that we have a piece of property that's been vacant that now will be occupied, and there will be revenue generated there. But I want to be careful that we're, with great intentions, we're not somehow putting limitations on what he may want to do or be able to do to expand his business moving forward. That's my only concern.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if there would be a trigger in here because he's really being given a permit for a specific use, and that's a limited rural business specifically for outdoor recreation products. If he deviates from that, he'd need to be coming in to revisit his permit anyway, just because we have that limited rural business that's kind of a broad category, but then we qualify that within every permit to specify what exactly they're looking to do. So he's probably going to trip that anyway. If he decided to, instead of outdoor products, he wanted to move into having a retail appliance store, he's going to have to come back in regardless. He would not be able to operate under this permit anyway.
I think a big part of the discussion at the planning meeting was, he was questioned by the planning commission as to manufacture rather than assembly.
Sure.
And he had he was pretty clear to the planning commission, and I think those of us who were in attendance there, that he was very happy with this site and to locate his business there, but he did not have the capabilities at that location to do manufacturing. So that part of an expansion of his business would probably never take place there. So I just wanted to make that notation to this.
This just helps him out if he ever wants to sell the company, then the next people don't have to come in and get an IEP for the same thing that they're doing right now.
Because boards change and everything changes. You could get turned down next time, who knows, for whatever reason.
So how you'd like this condition to read would be something along the lines of the interim use permit will terminate if outdoor recreational products cease to be produced at this site? Something similar to that? Okay, sounds good.
That is your intent.
Right, yep.
Is that somebody don't have to come in for a permit if they're doing the same business.
Right, if he would sell it, they want to do the same business, or if he sells it to his son or something, I don't know, if he has a builder, they would have to come back in. In this case, they would not have it.
Okay. All right, I will make that change.
With that being said, now I would look for a motion, perhaps for discussion, on this item.
And he made a motion, did he not?
No, he did not make a motion.
Change in the condition.
I'll second that.
Discussion, if there would happen to be any. Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
All right, that's all I have.
Thanks,
Thank
Amy.
you very, very kindly. Next item is going to be the auditor treasurer. No, that's lid. That's lid. Morning, Deb.
Good morning. I do have printed copies of the interest reports if you guys would like that.
I'd like one.
Okay.
We haven't seen an interest report yet.
Everybody?
That's the same as the electronic one that we have here? We get them both, all right. Thank you. Yep. Sometimes it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, before I forget it.
Well, Deb, it looks to me like there's a lot of numbers here, a lot of figures, so you have a lot of explaining to do.
Well, I wanted to give you an update on where all the numbers were and kind of what's going on. First page, what you see here, is basically a summary of all of our investments and our cash. So the top section summarizes all of our investments and our cash, basically by our revenue fund. We have a special interest that we have to keep separate for Irene Lee, who passed away, and until we can find heirs or whatever, we have to keep that money separate. Our debt service, our solid waste, and our local collab. And then down below is a breakout of, in revenue, here's where all the money is. So you can see we're trying to keep some money in local banks, and we're trying to work with some brokers. We tend to get better rates with brokers, but we're negotiating with the local banks to try to come close to what the brokers can do, and some of them are doing really well. Some of them just can't match it. So we negotiate back and forth, and we're doing the best we can. So we're trying to keep some money out there, and most of them are working with us really well. So we just wanted to kind of show you where the money's at. If you go to the next section, this is basically the interest we've earned. You can see the average interest rate at the top hasn't been very well over the last few years. Has been slowly growing. So last year we averaged 1.3. So far this year only 1, but that's at half a year. We are going to average closer to 2%.
Did you actually receipt in that CIP money? Because I know that hadn't happened as of yet.
As of June, it hadn't yet.
So this isn't actually receipted in yet, it's just...
Yeah, this will be changing a little bit because we've been having some communication problems with the email coming from them, from that bank, from Deutsche Bank. It shows as if it's coming from India, so it's getting kicked back to spam. So we're working with IT to try to clear all those email addresses.
Where is the CIP money? Where is that bond issue?
That would be coming through the SIP as debt service.
I know, but like where's the bank? Which bank is
The
it?
bank is actually in New York, but for some reason, all their email shows as if it's coming from India, and I don't know why. But that's actually going to be about $80,000 worth of interest that we receive in twice a year.
So the 91,000 in 2018 under CIP is part, like you're counting what isn't receipted in yet?
Right. So it's not showing in IFS yet, but I am showing it here because I know it exists.
I've been wondering about that because we haven't seen any in, revenue showing yet. and
we did finally get the
$12 million.
numbers.
Okay.
So they will be receiving it in.
I'd be more concerned about the correspondence coming from India and going into your junk basket of your.
I know, we've been working on that one with IT.
Is that the Vining Sparks? Is that brokerage account you opened up? Is that where it is?
Nope, it's in Deutsche Bank.
It's what?
Deutsche Bank.
I was going to say, God bless you.
Yeah. It's really weird.
But that's not listed on one of your...
Nope, because, it flows through Wells Fargo, it goes into solid waste, or not solid waste, CIP debt service funds. So it's part of debt service, it's that $12,487,000 we issued last April.
Yeah. But I'm talking about like the banks. Is that why it's not listed on the revenue breakdown because you don't have it receipted in yet?
It's not down on the bottom because that's only the revenue fund.
Oh, I see.
It's included in the top under debt service. I didn't break those down because there's only a couple.
I see.
But I did break down revenue because there are so many of them and so many different banks. So then our average interest rate, you can see, is finally starting to climb. It drops in 2018 only because we've only received it in half of a year. So by the end of the year, you'll see it's still climbing. Our rates for everything new that we're bringing in is going up and up and up. So I'm not taking out any new investments unless they have higher interest rates. And we're taking shorter term because the trend is still to keep continuing to climb. So we should be able to get greater rates as long as things continue on the path that they're on.
So not that this is my strong suit, because you obviously know it's not. Do you look at this on a routine basis?
Yeah.
Okay.
I look at this regularly because we have investments that come due at least quarterly.
Yep.
So every so often, well, at least once a month, I pull out all of our investments and our interest reports, and I take a look at what's coming due, what do we need to look at, what are the interest rates, and who do I need to talk to?
Then why aren't we receipting it in, Mr. Chair? Why is it, because we would have had that $12 million bond issue invested already back in, when did we issue that debt? In 17, yeah. That none of, has anything been receipted in from that bond issue?
Yeah, all of the stuff was receipted in last year. It's just we're having trouble getting the information from Deutsche Bank.
Okay.
And that's the only one that we're having trouble receipting in.
But why can't we get, it's been 7 months, 8 months, why can't we get, it's our money, we should be able to get it corrected.
Oh, it's going into the bank.
Okay.
We're just having trouble getting the information so we can put it into our financial system.
Yeah, because I know, well, speak of the devil, Steve has asked that question before, and I've been curious myself.
Wouldn't Randy from the state of Minnesota question this too?
And he did, and
He
we
did.
talked to him.
That's why I'm asking, yeah.
And I finally just called the bank and got the information. That's how we got the information, so we could get it on here and get it into IFS. It's like a month after we received it. So.
But we would receive interest on a monthly basis, right, or do we not?
Nope, we receive it twice a year. It's not a monthly. We accrue it monthly, but we only receive it twice a year, just like any other investment.
Okay.
Okay? So the next two graphs are just to show you our trend lines. The two that follow the same path, that's our cash that as it comes in, cash and bank. You can see when it peaks, that's when we're collecting our taxes, and when it drops, that's when we're paying out all of our bills. So we always peak in May and October. And we follow the same trends. You can see I put 2 different years in here, so you can see we're following the same trends every year, and it's followed the same path for years. And this last graph I put in to show you those same lines. We actually had an extra peak last year around December. You can see it peaked again because the tax laws changed, and everybody tried to take advantage of that change by paying their taxes early in December. Well, not everybody, but quite a few people. So we took in a bunch of extra money in December instead of them waiting and paying in May. They tried to pay early so that they'd get that break on their taxes. So we had an extra little peak there. And then you'll see that the green line, which was usually steady in prior years, when we took out the bond last April, our investments took a huge spike because we invested all that money. So our green line went way up. And then towards the end of the year, it starts going down as we take that money out and spend it on the restructure. So it'll continue to go down until we spend all of that $12 million.
Further questions, concerns, thoughts?
We will continue to work with Deutsche Bank. We will continue to figure out that email problem. But the cash is being receipted in. It's just, if we don't get it, we will call and get the numbers and receipt them in.
Okay. Good. All right, if we got nothing else, I think you've got
Next
some
item.
more business.
Yes, we received contract from MCCC for Trimin Systems. And basically, we just need to ratify that contract.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. We had robust discussion about this at our planning meeting. And I don't know, I'm personally discussioned out on this topic, so anybody else have anything? Hearing nothing, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Another item, we have Bethany Lutheran Church of Ramey wants to hold bingo on September 30th at the church hall. We just need approval for that.
Look for a motion.
Twice.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
And we have warrants.
And I would look for a motion to pay all of the bills.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Lemire?
Aye.
Wilson?
Aye.
Blaine?
Aye.
And myself as an aye vote, that motion passes. Thank you very kindly, Deb.
Thanks, Deb.
I'll do Steve's.
And because Mr. Bukowski isn't here, but because Ms. Gruber is here, and you want to be Steve, go ahead.
I do. Steve has a couple action items. One is the redesignation of Great River Road. He talked about this at a planning session with the details, and for some reason thought and was confident enough in your understanding to leave me with that action item because I don't have a lot of, extra details for you in terms of that. But it's a redesignation for that Great River Road.
Look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. I personally think it's a safer route, so. Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you. And the other action item is a replacement position. There was a resignation of an engineer tech a couple of months ago, I believe it occurred. And Steve took a step back to take a look at the workload, worked with me on that, and with the workload that exists, he is requesting to refill that vacant position as it sits right now as the programs gear up again in the work in the summer or the winter to be able to do all the designing and the engineer work for those projects.
I look for a motion.
Second.
Discussion?
We had an in-depth conversation about this at our Public Works meeting.
Yep.
He proved to us that it would really hinder us if we didn't continue moving forward with this.
And there was a number of years ago when the programs were smaller because of lack of funding that was there, that we did decrease our engineer staff. This is remaining at that same level. We're not adding at this point in time. However, that is something that we're kind of right on the cusp of workload being able to be maintained by that reduced level that we went down to a number of years ago. So, it's a valid question. It's a good look at staffing levels as appropriate when we have change in staff. So.
And Mr. Chair, we've also added more workload on them with the trail systems and the parks. And
Absolutely.
So, while they're staying the same, we're still putting more stuff on their backs.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Aye.
And that, I believe, takes care of Public Works. I then would look to the administrator for some more information, along with Greg Kimmon from the City of Little Falls. Good morning, Greg.
Good job.
You're on.
But now it's, okay, there. I can't just start talking, Greg, because
I'll just start
we're having a
talking.
little technical difficulty here.
So this morning, we are looking for the board's approval to reestablish the joint zoning board at the airport. So there would be 2 individuals from Morrison County, 2 individuals from the city of Little Falls. We are requesting Little Falls Township to be a participant in that as well. If they choose to, then they would appoint 2. If not, then it would just be the 2 from the city and the county. And then that group would select 1 to be the chairman, so an independent person from all of those individuals. So we would have an odd number on the board. Because we are updating the crosswind runway, if you recall, it's at about a 5-degree tilt right now. We're going straight north and south and going to be paving that in the near future here. That needs to be rezoned to look at the airspace to correlate to that shift. And in doing so, we would have to go through the process in terms of identifying that shift to be straight north and south and getting this input from the board, and then bringing it back to both the city and the county. Well, because you guys deal with the zoning aspect of it. So with that, I would be looking for your approval to go ahead and reestablish that board.
I'd look for a motion.
Let's so move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Discussion?
Deb, did you happen to get a hold of Bob?
I wasn't able to get a hold of him. I can call him. You said you were going to call him, actually, remember?
I did.
Okay.
I sent him a text
Okay.
saying the details of what he needed to do. That's what, that's what he was interested in knowing, when meetings would be, the details of that. And I sent his cell phone number. I think he'll do that, but I just haven't had a confirmation.
I misunderstood you then when you popped in my office the other day. I thought you were calling him with that. So I apologize for that.
Well,
I
no,
misunderstood.
because I don't know the details. I don't know when the meetings are.
Well, we don't know exactly when the meetings are. It would only be just a couple of times, a few times.
The question was more, is it during the day? Is it in the evening because he works?
Sure.
Those types of things, and that's what I didn't know.
I know the individuals that the city's going to be appointing would like to have them at night as well, simply because they work during the day. And so those times haven't been established. It would be established by the group, but I suspect it's going to be a night meeting. I'm looking at probably 4, maybe 5 meetings. It's pretty straightforward in terms of the process. Less than 6 months is what I envision this thing to be. Now, it is technically a long-term appointment, but the work should be completed within 6 months, and I don't think we've done this since 1974. So it's not as if it's a lot of commitment in terms of time after this is completed.
Well, and Greg, for the sake of argument, this group was actually formed many years ago.
Yes.
Then obviously, because there was no need for it, it was disbanded.
Yep.
This group is being put together again for not the sole purpose, and I don't want to suggest that it's the sole purpose of funding.
Correct.
But that certainly is a big part of it.
Yep.
That we have to do in order to obtain in order to obtain grant funding.
That's correct.
Once this project is completed, in all honesty, this group probably is going to be set on the side.
That's correct.
And probably will not meet again.
20 years from now.
20 years
20
from
years
now.
from now, yes.
And if they're still around, they would, and if they're not, we would be in the same boat that we are right now.
That is correct.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I spoke with Pat, and I was hoping that you would reach out to him yourself. 'Cause
Okay.
You're gonna, you're part of the airport commission and all that. So I personally, and with Bob too, maybe those are things to give him a little update. 'Cause I did tell him that you would more likely be attending these meetings
Yep.
with them.
Yep.
To, give them suggestions, not to say that, that they would approve or disapprove, but I would like to make sure you do that to them. And Deb has all the phone numbers, and I think of Pat, I gave those all to you, you can have those. So if you need the information from them, from Pat especially, you
Yep.
can reach out to Deb, and then you can get that, so that's
Yes.
all I ask.
Once all of the appointments are made, then they'll work as a group to determine when times to meet are best for them. And so Greg will manage that.
That's
I
correct,
assume
yep.
that he was
Yep.
going to do that. So there really are two separate issues here, one being approving that development of the zoning board for the airport, and then the two appointees. And if for some reason it doesn't work for either of them, we can reappoint somebody else. And then that would be the first action item, and the other action item will be a grant that you'll talk about in a minute here.
And if I may, again, Mr. Henry, he's right over by the airport.
Yep.
He lives over there.
Right at the corner there.
Mike, where Bob Tremble lives.
So with that,
Where's Bob live?
Here's.
Yeah.
we've got a motion on the table. I just want to make sure that I'm square on the motion, and the motion is to appoint these two individuals to the airport zoning board. Is that correct?
Yep. And kind of create the action to create the zoning board.
Yep. So that is what the motion is. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Now, Ms. Gruber, if you could explain, or maybe Greg, if you can explain what we're looking for our second motion here.
So the second item on the agenda here is in regards to a grant from the FAA for the design of the crosswind runway. Similar to what we spoke in regards about a little earlier, the rezoning of it, this is actually the design. We do have a consultant on board doing the design. At the time, we were anticipating the 90-10 split, 90% grant, 10% local, which would be split between the county, city, as well as the state. This is the big portion of it. This is the 90% grant from the feds. We submitted our application back in, I think it was April, and for whatever reason, they just were backlogged. They finally got to us now. So this is a draft, but we're looking for the final one coming up here. I would like pre-approval to authorize and execute this grant agreement so we can get the 90% grant from the feds for the design of that crosswind runway.
That's the motion I would be looking for.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Greg, thank you very kindly for your information. I know you're the guy to go to on this kind of stuff, so thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That's not that you weren't.
And Greg, I will get you the contact information for Bob and Pat.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Our next item on the docket is going to continue on with the administrator.
The financial statement approval that was sent separately in your board packet. I don't know if Steve has anything to add for that. He's here to talk about it.
That's huge.
This is done. We talked about this numerous times throughout, the year itself and at the end of the year. This is just a requirement that we have to publish it. Most of this publication is how we've tried to save money is we've taken all our vendor listings, instead of doing it after every time we pay warrants, we're just doing it once annually because it saves us money in the end. Even though this isn't cheap to publish, it still saves us some money over time, so. And there's a lot of information in there. You could sleep well at night if you want to read it more. But we've talked about this numerous times. We've had discussions on most of the information or all the information in here, so.
So what I'd be looking for is a motion to approve the publication of the 2017 financial statement.
Second.
Second.
Discussion?
This we discussed this before too. Does this go on our website too or not?
It does, yes.
Yep, we put it on the website. If anybody would request it, we certainly could send that to them. This has been a topic of debate for many, many years in the lobbying world when it comes to the requirement to print it in a local paper, because it is quite expensive. And
It's about $8,500.
Yep, quite small, somewhat difficult to read, but there's always copies that we can make available if somebody would like more information. In the format in which we print it is prescribed, and that's the part that often we would like to see if we could differently. There are probably more effective ways to do it, but to have to pay for the way that's prescribed plus an additional, it just adds to cost. And so it's always an interesting, again, a point of debate in the lobbying world.
We never seem to get legislation to use our website as the official publication of this. It seems like it has to go in.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor? Those opposed? That motion passes. Steve, thank you.
The biggest thing about this, the questions that come, most of them are about, you probably get a phone call about, oh, I didn't get a check from the county. Well, remember, this is 2017,
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
just keep that in mind, because I know, when you do get questions, they're not talking about the financials, they're asking about, I didn't get any money from the county.
It's
and
the vendor list.
The vendor list is the one that usually draws the questions out from the public, so.
Very good. Thank you, Steve.
All right, thank you.
See you at 1.
Ms. Gruber, do you have anything further?
Yeah, a few updates if you would entertain them.
Absolutely.
One being the Lake Shamana lid. I know you've asked a couple of times. I've gotten questions from some of you about when that will be coming forward for more discussion. I was working with John Kolb, drew a blank on his name. We had a conference call with him, and as you had directed the last time when he was here, he's working with the lid and with their attorney regarding modification suggestions for the order of establishment. If you recall, there was a question about the revenue generation for their orders of establishment and how that could look. Number one, based on their request for Lake Shamana Association, I believe is the name, but then also opening that up to having more option for revenue generation. And then there were a few other things that they were looking at, like authorities and whatnot. And so, as John said, it's really the LID's job to come up with language for that and then to bring it to you for consideration. Whether that will be done in time for a 2019 assessment, I'm skeptical, because I don't think it's something that any of us want to take lightly in terms of the ability to step back and look at that. And so that's what's happening right now in that order of establishment world. I don't know, I haven't seen a request from Lake Shamana yet to bring their budget forward. As you saw today, Crookneck came in. All of the lake improvement districts will come in the next couple of months and bring that forward. So I haven't seen that request from them yet to bring that forward. So that's what's happening on that front. The building update, things are moving along nicely. They should be finishing carpeting, I believe, in the 70s building soon, probably by the end of this week or shortly thereafter.
Upstairs.
Both. They're laying carpet downstairs also.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And then we'll go through, I think, either this week or early next week, the punch list where we'll walk through and kind of figure out what needs to be fixed, or, the nicks or anything, paint touch-ups, things like that. Furniture is scheduled to be here at the end of September. Hopefully move in at the beginning of October. We'll do the front, or the top level, the first floor first, and then the lower level after that, because furniture is being reused in those individual offices in the lower level, so we need to wait until it's vacated in that extra room. One of the small changes that I think we're going to be able to make work is the temporary location for extensions down in that garden level. We were going to move them on the original plans, move them in a temporary location, kind of in meeting room 1 right now, and then finished behind that, and then move them when it's complete up to where their permanent home will be, which is the second level of that 60s building, or the public health building. That is I think we're going to modify that. If it works, we're going to temporarily locate them in that employee break room area where we kind of have an open space. And that way, then the idea is that they can work completely in the garden level and finish that off at this stage or the next stage in the project versus wait until the end. And so what that means is that admin and the boardroom would be complete earlier than later. It was scheduled to be that very tail end. And so I think that would help in many regards in terms of space. And so the more we looked at it, the more we thought we could make that work. So I'm hoping that that plan continues. And then we can get into that boardroom and occupy that space and be back home earlier than later with that. So I'll keep you posted on how that goes. What else was I going to say? I can't remember. Something with the building, but I don't recall what it is. Oh, we've been working with, starting with a committee that's formed to work on signage. And ultimately, signage that then works with our keyless entry system and how we name entrances and how we want to directionally sign for people and where that stuff goes. You know, kind of really stepping back and looking at the complex as a whole, and really helping to get people where they need to go with as little of confusion as possible. Looking at signage out in the parking lot already, signage then that, you know, we're using the same language when it comes to describing the buildings and the entrances for emergency response reasons, all of that. And so we're kind of sitting down and putting our heads together with a group from the county staff, including law enforcement, to making sure that we have, as we approach the whole complex and where things are at, that we kind of start from scratch and a clean slate to really have a naming system that makes sense when we move forward for technology reasons and for emergency response reasons and all of that. And so it's been interesting, and more to come on that to learn how to approach those different aspects of a remodel.
Cool.
Any other questions for me? All right.
Hearing none, I think we need to now talk about schedules, and we're going to start with Commissioner Wilson today.
Where are we going from?
We're going to go from September 9th through the 15th.
Okay, on the 11th, we got a planning.
Sorry, through the 22nd.
On the 11th, we got planning session at 8:30, budget meeting at 1. On the 12th, I've got the health board in Staples at 3. 13th and 14th AMC conference. I got down here 8 o'clock. On the 18th, I have Water Festival, and I think that's at
9 o'clock at Camp Ripley.
Okay, I've got 8, but 9 o'clock. County board meeting at 10 o'clock.
That's correct.
Community development at 12:15. And on the 19th, I have Water Festival again at 9 o'clock. On the 20th, Airport Commission at noon. And that is all that's on this calendar.
Okay. Commissioner Lemire.
Yeah, Yellow Ribbon on the 10th, 5:30. Public Health, 5 o'clock on the 12th. There's a Yellow Ribbon Run at Camp Ripley at 7 on the 15th.
Mr. Chair, are we supposed to go cheer you on, Commissioner Lemire, or how would you?
No, I thought I'd be cheering you guys.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. Or
Sorry.
spraying us.
I just
one or
wanted
the
to make
other.
sure we knew what color you're going to wear.
And I think Mike has the rest of mine. The Water Festival, I have 8:45. Is it 9?
I think if you show up at 8:45, the little welcome is at 9-ish.
Yeah, that's-
It depends on when the students all come.
Yeah.
In the gymnasium.
And that's,
You should probably be there at 8:45, yes, that's correct.
I'm just making sure I don't want to be late.
No, well, exactly.
that's a reminder that's why we changed the start time of that
Of the
board meeting that day. It'll be 10 instead of 9.
Commissioner Blaine,
I have nothing more.
Commissioner Wilson,
I already did mine.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Wincher, sorry about that.
Okie dokie. We have department head, I guess, on the 12th at 8:30. And then that AMC is going to be in Arrowhead, Alexandria, if everybody attending. I have a union negotiation on the 17th for Great River at 8:15. And then at 10 o'clock, I have, or excuse me, on the 18th, at 5 o'clock, I have the Great River Regional Board meeting. On the 19th, I have TCC at 5 p.m. And that's it.
I missed something before the 18th. What did you say right before the 18th?
The 7th, Great River, the negotiation for labor union at 8:15 in the morning on the 17th, GRRL. That's something that just came up here last.
And Mr. Chair, did you want to be registered for that Alexandria AMC conference? Because
I
you,
don't know, someone else is, I don't know.
are you,
Oh, do I want to?
are you intending on going?
I don't really know yet.
Okay.
Well, I'm not staying overnight, if that's what you're asking.
Well, yes, but there's also a registration to get you registered is what,
What time is it in the morning?
8 o'clock,
yeah.
Thursday.
So I guess
I know you did send me and I was supposed to respond and I didn't.
just letting you know you're not registered. If you want to be registered, there's something that has to happen for that, so let them know, yeah.
Register me, please. For the Thursday, Friday I won't be there.
Okay.
So if we decide that we want to attend that or need to attend that AMC conference, how soon do you need a confirmation on that full registration?
I don't know when,
Yesterday.
yeah.
That's why they're pushing me right now to.
I'm thinking, so I thought I saw something come across that it was still open.
Well, and I think sometimes you can go, they'll bill us later if that's the case, but it's always, you just won't be registered and you won't have your
You won't have a name tag.
stuff all there,
You'll
and
have
you
to-
know, it's kind of
They're
hard
going to
to,
scribble it. You're going to handwrite your name tag.
well, and I mean, I'm sure you can imagine that it's for those that are putting it on, if everybody did that, but I'm sure just one is not a problem.
And of course, it would be just one. Well, no, in this case, two.
And I'll make a further evaluation of the validity of that and get back
Okay.
to you. But, yeah.
Best thing to do is if you can't go, you can register then.
On the 10th. That, you know?
No, yes,
Yeah, but if you
Okay.
register.
On the 10th,
Don't go then.
6:30 at night,
Have your name tags?
Morrison
I
County
would
Public
say they
Safety.
would.
That's going to be at Public Health, the library,
So I sign up for it, and I don't go, they don't get charged.
6:30 PM.
Okay.
On the 11th, at noon,
About me?
oh, you're done, towards zero death.
Shut me.
On the 13th, 10 o'clock, I've got Next Gen 911 in Alec.
Are you not doing that?
Sorry, I'm not doing that. I'm just doing AMC. And I'm doing AMC on the 14th.
Are you doing trails?
Nope. Wait a second. Yes, on the 14th.
On the 13th?
No, I'm not doing trails on the 13th. And then on the 14th, I'm not going to do Armor either.
Right.
I got that. On Tuesday, the 18th, we had that water festival. We got County Board, Farm Family. At 12 o'clock, if it works out that I can be there, which I'm sure I can't, there's a CAPS meeting, CAPS.
Where?
That's going to be at the courts. That starts at noon, so I'm sure I'm not going to it. But possible, but I doubt it. And that's enough on that page. Water Festival, 20th at 10 o'clock.
Do you have a Hands of Hope on the 9th?
I, of course, missed it at 5 o'clock, yes. Pine Country Bank.
Yep.
On the 20th, 10 o'clock, Armor.
Yep.
Owners and Operators in Alec. Egg Society at 7:30.
Yep.
On the 21st, I've got interviews with Extension. That's in St. Cloud.
That's at their office, right?
It's at their office in St. Cloud.
Yeah.
And that is enough. Is there any other business that needs to come before the board? I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Canceled.
I was-
Concerned. Done. We out.